People come to Cambodia to either find themselves or they completely get blasted and lost. I wasn't feeling happy and fulfilled in New York like I thought I would be. In the US, it's like once you're a kid, you just go off and then you take care of yourself. But in Cambodia, you go off and then you're expected to take care of your family. You could just make $20,000 in the US and live here for a couple years. Cambodia is a hotbed for opportunity right now. I don't like the occasional tarantula in my house. Quality of life was diminished. I was living in a house of 9 people. People who have no money here in Cambodia will always open their door to you and offer you rice, no matter what.
Meet Julia from the United States, the River Gallery director. Julia moved to Cambodia in 2022. Today she shared her insights regarding her experiences in Cambodia, including the work-life balance, the opportunities available to foreigners, and the challenges she has faced while living in Cambodia.
I wasn't feeling happy and fulfilled in New York like I thought I would be. I was basically busting ass. I was leading 7 fitness classes a week because I'm also a personal trainer. I had 2 private clients. I was painting 6 hours a day. Every Thursday, I would go up into Chelsea with my art friends. I started teaching classes at the Art Students League. I started showing in Chelsea, which is basically most artists' dream. Chelsea is like the place to show. It's blue chip. It's all the most important artists in the world outside of places like London, Paris, maybe LA. So it was a difficult decision for me as an artist to leave New York because I was just finding amazing success. I had already seen that success in Chicago, and I had shown in New Orleans and other places, but New York, as it is in the United States, is still, and it remains, the epicenter of the art world at large. So it's kind of like this, it's like a catch-22, because a lot of artists move there and it used to be affordable, but now a lot of the artists can no longer afford New York, so they're leaving. So that was another thing. The quality of life was diminished. I was living in a house of 9 people. So I didn't really have privacy, and it was just like I was working in large part to live and pay my rent. I was getting a lot of artwork done, but the quality of life actually wasn't what I thought that it would be. We have a really crazy problem with shootings in the United States, people going into churches or nightclubs. And in 2016, there was that Pulse nightclub shooting. Someone went into a gay nightclub. I believe it was in Miami. And I was just like, you know what? I don't care where I go in this world, but something's calling me to do something for this world, just period. It was simple. And so I wrote Bill on the train going back to Chicago. At that time, I lived in Chicago. And I said, hey, is there an opportunity for me to come to Cambodia and volunteer for 2 or 3 months? I just felt really distraught in my heart, and it really didn't matter where I went, but I just wanted to help somehow. I was feeling a lot of pain, and so he was just like, where there's a will, there's a way, and that's what I love about Bill. He's just an amazing person. Since that time in 2017, that changed everything for me. In looking at Cambodia, I think that a lot more artists should move here. I'm actually encouraging artists to move here because the overhead is extremely low. You can find a place for as low as $100. It's very affordable, and more importantly, the lifestyle increased my happiness. The weather, number 1, because I would get seasonal affective disorder and I would get depressed in the winter. Number 2, the people. Going back to that, just the sabai, the laughter, the joy, even through immense pain, was a huge teacher for me. The poorest of the poor will always open their door and give you food. And one interesting thing about the US is that it encourages autonomy and independence, but with that, the darker side is isolation and feeling alone. And there's a very systemic problem in the United States with mental illness. And for me, when I moved to Cambodia, I found a very profound sense of peace and happiness, and that I could not find in New York. Even in New York, a place that I love and that is so rich with the arts.
You've been here off and on, or been living here since 2017?
My first opportunity to come here was in 2015. And so I only came for a very brief period, just 3 days. But that was when I actually met the founder of Colors of Cambodia, which is the NGO that I now volunteer with for 8 years. So the first time I attempted moving here was early 2020 with my previous partner. I was with someone who lived in New York for a few years, and he said, sure, I'll move to Cambodia with you. So we came here January of 2020, set a life up. Found an amazing apartment in Wat Bo community. And then what happened was COVID came. I actually went to India to get yoga certified, and I got trapped out of Cambodia. I could not get back to Cambodia after I got yoga certified. So there I was in the mountains of Dharamshala. And then I got stuck in Delhi for 10 days because the whole country shut down. So I was actually evacuated by the Mormons from Delhi. So I ended up back in the United States, estranged from my partner that I had just moved here with. So that was the first time I tried to move here. Ended up back in the States, traveled the US in a converted van for a year. And then I realized at 40 years old, I wanted to make radical changes in my life because I wasn't happy with where I was at. So I left my partnership. He was a wonderful person, but I left my partnership and I moved to Cambodia, and I also quit drinking at that time. So I, let that go. I just basically radically changed my life. And then I ended up here in 2022. So I've officially been here for almost 3 years total.
Can I ask, what is life-work balance here in Cambodia compared to the US?
The life-work balance, as I mentioned, living in New York particularly was so much work because you're essentially living to pay the rent. As I said, I lived with 9 people, but at the same time, I was still paying $1,200 for rent myself for the one room, So our whole rent was like maybe $8,000 or something. But I think that there's a really toxic focus on working like a hustle culture. And I think there is a fine balance, right? There has to be time for your spirituality or for your meditation practice and for yourself. There has to be time for friends, time for your lover, time for, art making, as well as work. So I think there's a healthier balance. But with that being said, I think that comes from the Western privilege perspective as well, because Cambodians work harder than a lot of people I've seen. They wake up super early, 5, 6 in the morning, earlier than that usually, 4 or 5 in the morning. And they work all day until sundown. I watch my sister Pani, after she gets out of work, being the main teacher at COC, she'll go home and make pickles. She sells pickles and tries to help her family as much as she can, because Southeast Asian culture is so rooted in the family that often the children will end up providing for their entire family. So that's a little bit different than the US. In the US, it's like, okay, go on, little fledgling. Once you're a kid, you just go off and then you take care of yourself. But in Cambodia, you go off and then you're expected to take care of your family. So I don't know, it's hard to compare because the cultures are so radically different with the life-work balance, but I find that I can breathe in Cambodia, you know what I mean? I actually have time to just exist in these amazing serendipitous conversations and moments, and it feels less toxic, The drive, I think, when you move to a country like Cambodia, you've probably seen this. If you don't already have that inner drive, it could be problematic because Cambodia has huge addiction problems. Also, Cambodia is kind of like the Wild West. You can do whatever you want. You could just make $20,000 in the US and live here for a couple years, if you're careful with it. And then just drink your ass off every day for 50-cent beers, So again, it's who's the person who's coming into this culture, if you don't have, I've always said this, if you're not a strong person, like in the interior, if you don't have a strong work ethic, but more importantly, if you don't have the strength within to keep your weaknesses in balance, i.e. your addictions or things like that, any dark facet of your spirit, Cambodia will consume you alive. It'll eat you alive. It will destroy you because it's not an easy place. And a big part of that is the accessibility. If you have a problem with uppers or speed or Adderall, you could walk into any pharmacy in town and get your fix. Or you could just buy it off a tuk-tuk driver, you know what I mean? Like, the accessibility here is astounding. So if you don't have your darker facets in check, I think it's troublesome, you know? So I always say people come to Cambodia to either find themselves or they completely get blasted and lost, you know? So I think that it's important for people who come to Cambodia to be strong, you know, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that. The other thing is, yeah, like if you have a healthy work attitude, I love work. I find so much satisfaction in work because I have about 10 to 15 years being a full-time artist. And as a full-time artist, no one is pushing you to do your work. No one. You're only answering to yourself. So I already had that integrity with me. So coming to Cambodia was a very natural transition for me. But if you don't have that push, you'll see people that just get lazy here, you know, because it's such a slower pace and you can get by with just doing a little bit here, a little bit there, and nothing more is expected of you. And that is partly cultural. But for me, I'm not gonna go as hard as I did in New York because I don't have to pay a $2,000 rent, but I'm still gonna go hard. I'm still gonna work every day. Right now as it is, I'm trying my best to take Mondays off. You know how that goes. Like, I just want one day off, you know? Even this Monday I have a meeting, so it's like, you know, it's almost like if you go too hard the other way, you've got to pull back. So Cambodia is really, really good with that, where I feel a balance here.
Do you think the expats here have more opportunities to create something or have more opportunities for work in Cambodia?
I think so, absolutely. I think there's so many business opportunities here now, whether or not people can create those businesses through the Cambodian government and powers that be. But I feel like Cambodia is a hotbed for opportunity right now. You know, I'm seeing like little things that people could do every day that have never existed here before. What about a cafe that has endless coffee? Hello? What about a company that sells shower filters because all the women's hair is falling out in Siem Reap because there's hard water? You know, there's like little pockets of opportunities that people can really come here and make a quality life for themselves, but also helping Cambodians and helping the culture propel forward. I find it radically exciting because hip hop is new here, LGBTQ movement's popping, body acceptance movement is relatively new. Even going to the gym is super new. Like, I knew this woman who, she started teaching at the local gym. She was the only woman trainer there in the beginning. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. And now there's a lot of women trainers. So it's just a hotbed of excitement here where, because Cambodia is a little bit more developmentally, I do not like to say this, but it's almost like you're stepping back in time because the genocide stunted a lot of the growth that was happening here, including progressive rock and roll, fashionistas, people that were coming here from all around the world to visit the temples. And many, many years ago, this was the most populous region in the entire world. It had the most concentrated amount of people in the entire world. So there's so much energy here. So yeah, I just feel like it was a country that was deeply stunted by the genocide. And so it's not really behind the times, but it's a really unique culture in that sense where everything feels new and exciting here. And there are so many opportunities to be had, even for people from different countries coming in. So, but with that being said, I also feel like it's really important not to be tone deaf and to work with Cambodians and to hire in Cambodians and, you know, uphold Cambodians. So not to be tone deaf and just come in here and start your own business just to make money, you know? That's the kind of stuff we don't want.
Oh yeah, yeah. Of course, of course. You have to create job for the locals as well. Is that something that you are still not used to in Cambodia, or you are still like adjusting to fit in Cambodia?
I don't like the occasional tarantula in my house. There's also a bug called the rove beetle. Have you heard of this? The rove beetle is very interesting. It doesn't bite you and it doesn't sting you, but if you touch it and you get any of its fluid onto your body, it causes a huge rash, and the acid basically causes welts on your body. So I have not adjusted to some of the creatures in Cambodia, but I don't know anyone who has. So other than that, I feel very well adjusted. Oh, hot season is horrific. So I don't think anyone will ever adjust. Even Cambodians last year, because we broke records with the heat, we're like, oh my God, this is the hottest it's ever been. So even the most well-adjusted Cambodian was, uncomfortable last year. So I haven't really adjusted to that. So it's more so like topical things. But as far as the way of life, generally, I think I'm pretty well adjusted. So
What are the struggles living here in Cambodia?
the struggle for most people, especially expats, is finding viable work. So a lot of people do teaching online and teaching English and things like that. I feel very fortunate, and I spend every day existing in complete gratitude for the fact that I met Bill Gentry, who's the founder of Colors of Cambodia. And I feel like, again, like it's a big family, and I feel like it's a big bear hug. If I hadn't met Bill, I'm not sure where I'd be right now. He really changed my life. And he's just a very positive person. And he was just like, where there's a will, there's a way. And I never forgot that. And that's why he's my closest friend here in Cambodia. He's just such an awesome person. But yeah, I think it's just a way of finding money, really, for anyone. You've got to come here with savings, or you have to teach English, or be a digital nomad, or make content, which are not necessarily easy paths for anyone, but I think that's one of the biggest difficulties for expats who move here.
And how has Cambodia changed you?
How has Cambodia changed me?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm settled in my soul. Since I moved here 3 years ago, like I said, I quit drinking. So for me, sobriety from alcohol particularly was deeply important. I bring that up because in giving up something I was attached to, that's a huge Buddhist principle, is non-attachment. So I've been deeply working on my attachment, as well as my personal wounds from childhood. Nothing traumatic, but we all carry traumas and things, storylines. So since moving here, I've done 2 10-day silent meditation retreats, which deconstructed my mind in a way that I had never considered before. Last year, I went through a wild, intense, crazy, difficult spiritual awakening. It was insane. And I don't use those words lightly because I'm not like hippy dippy, but I woke up every day with shaking hands and like lost a bunch of weight. Like, it was insane what was happening to me inside my body. And I just sat with myself every day and meditated and prayed because I didn't know what was happening to me. But I do think that in being here, visiting the temples all the time, I get such spiritual fulfillment from visiting the temples, having conversations like this. I have experienced an awakening, and I've completely radically changed, but I feel like myself. It's not like, oh, Julia's so different. It's more, I'm grounded, and most importantly, I do not care what people think of me. My whole life, I cared too much what people thought about me. I tried to make people feel, and I still do that, I make people feel safe and feel heard, but often I was putting other people's needs in front of my own. Now I put my own needs first, and then I'm way more able to help people around me. My nervous system settled down a lot being in Cambodia. So I think that just the pace of life here slowed it down. It's easy to landslide into bullshit in Cambodia. You can just go out every night, smoke a joint, drink a beer, hang out with your friend. Every night there's something going on, you know? But coming into Cambodia, I already had that balance somewhat. I've always been a hard worker, you know, because if I don't make my work, I feel like shit, basically. So working for myself as a young artist, the most important thing I tell the young artists here is you got to work. I mean, it's very simple. It's very rudimentary. But if you don't bust ass and you don't work, you're not going to get to the level that you deserve to be at, you know, and you won't be able to make a viable living. That's it. It's a very simple principle, but very incredibly difficult to do and to maintain.
What you've learned from Cambodians that helps you in your daily life?
As I mentioned, the number one reason I am here is the kindness and the openness of Cambodian people. I have never in my life in this world met people who are so open-hearted and so generous. The people who have no money here in Cambodia will always open their door to you and offer you rice, no matter what, without question. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned from Cambodian is the generosity and the depth of heart. Like it's just amazing because in the US, I think, as I mentioned, it can go, independence is great, but what it has created is an attitude of what's mine is mine and holding on for nothing, you know, rather than opening up your home. You don't have to open up your home, but opening up your heart, your generosity, switching that mindset where you're not holding on so tightly, because what are we holding on to, you know? Another thing I've learned is how Cambodia respects their elders. There's a huge respect for grandma, grandpa, and the elders often remain in the home, safe, protected with loved ones. And it's not good or bad. I don't know. It's like in the US though, a lot of the elderly are put into homes. And I don't think a lot of Cambodians understand why or how that is. How did our culture get to this point where, you know, the elderly are just mistreated or they're just kind of pushed to the side? And it's not completely perfect in Cambodia. Geez, sometimes you'll see women in their 60s or 70s sitting on the side of the road selling rice or things that they've made at home, and that's really difficult to see, but that's out of necessity, so that's a little bit different. But the community, the togetherness, I was really missing that in the States. I didn't realize how lonely I felt, you know? And then coming here, eating meals together, that sense of togetherness, it was huge for me. I didn't realize how much I was missing that. Even walking through town, waving hello to friends and feeling embraced by a community, those that are here for the right reasons, the expats, the locals. I feel like a big bear hug, you know? So it feels cozy.
Everyone's saying that.
So, yeah.
The people are so nice, so
It feels warm. Yeah, I think just the openness of heart and the kindness and generosity I've taken away greatly.
How was you able to adapt to the culture here?
Notice when you come in the gallery, I'm always barefoot. And I bring it back to this because when I was younger, I was a little girl, I was always barefoot. I was always running around in the woods, and I don't know, there's something about Cambodia that reminds me of my childhood. I grew up on a dirt road. I grew up in the countryside. My dad was a farmer, and we had barns behind our house that has the metal siding, similar to the houses in the countryside. There's something about Cambodia that feels familiar to me, and I can't explain it. So the transition felt very comfortable, which is weird because a lot of people feel uncomfortable when they come to Cambodia. I actually heard a story of a woman, she was from New York. She said that her niece came to Cambodia and it was so difficult for her to witness the sadness and some of the darker aspects that she left. So it's not for everyone. I think that you have to be, and I will reiterate this from time to time or over and over again, you have to be strong when you come to a place like Cambodia, because it isn't easy to see the level of poverty, to see the amount of people that are walking around with limbs that are blown off from landmines, you know. But a huge shift occurs when you start asking yourself, what can I do for others versus how can I propel myself forward? You know, it's working in the higher good for humanity. And when you come to a place like Cambodia, you cannot exist within a vacuum. You must not be tone deaf. What can you do to contribute to this culture? We see plenty of people around town who are literally doing nothing, you know, and it's disconcerting. But in Cambodia, we cannot be tone deaf, man, you know. Like, even if it's a small way after you've taken care of yourself and your own needs and your own spiritual practices, how are you benefiting Cambodian culture? Are you just here for the low rent and the cheap cigarettes, you know, or are you here to actually exist in the higher good for humanity, whatever that looks like? And that goes for wherever you are. But in Cambodia specifically, because of it being a more impoverished country, or one of the most impoverished countries in the world, and, you know, coming from a war that just ended in 1979 that you still see vestiges from, it's deeply important, and Cambodia has been reliant on the help of outsiders, other countries. So now it's like, I think one of the bigger things is, how can we assist and encourage conversation and facilitate conversation with the younger generations so that they can then move forward with that sense of independence and autonomy and find their own voice, because they are keen on that. They're fiery, you know, and they're ready for change. And it's the most amazing thing. They'll come to me with $1. That dollar is everything to them. That dollar is a meal. That dollar is 2 meals, 3 meals. And they say, we want to donate our money, because they do not want to be seen as poor. They do not want to be seen as a certain way. They are strong and powerful and fiery, and they have something to say.
What do you like most about living in Cambodia?
The sense of community, yeah, family, togetherness. The fact that I feel like I'm walking down Mayberry Street, you know, like waving to people, like, I don't know. What I love most about Cambodia is the sense of the smoke in the air, and the fact that everything feels so tactile. It feels real. Like, as an oil painter, even the tone of the light is different. When you go to the United States, the tone of the light is a cold blue, and when you come here, it's a warm blue. So you can visually see it. So for me, I've had problems with depression in the past, particularly when it's winter, because it's winter like 6 months out of the year where I grew up. Being here, it's like, yeah, when you don't get that depression 6 months out of the year, it's a game changer, you know?
It's Khmer food.
I like Khmer food. I like namban chuk. I like fish and mok. Honestly, though, Cambodian food's not my favorite. What I love about Siem Reap is that we have all sorts of cuisine here. We've got Indian cuisine. I eat Indian probably like 2 or 3 times a week. Tons of French food, obviously, because of the French population. Japanese. So yeah, a lot of people look at Cambodia and they might not realize, oh my gosh, it's so multicultural even when it comes to food culture. So yeah, but Cambodian food is good. It's just not something that I seek out.
I saw your video, you speak Khmer. How do you learn Khmer?
So I first started at Speak Like Khmer School, which is more of a formal setting. I put together a group of 6 women, and we started taking lessons together about 1.5 years ago. And then one thing that I found was missing at the school was it was just a little too formal, and I really wanted to do more of like speaking. So I found the best teacher in Cambodia. His name is Benton, and he started his own school. He developed an entire school. So yeah, you guys go with Benton if you guys are going to study Khmer, because he's amazing. And so what he did, I'll give you an example. For example, otiha. the expression tik tik.
Tick tick. Yeah.
Benton taught me it's not tik tik, it's ntik
Tick.
ntik. So he's dialed me in to the nuance, and that's insane. Because now I'm at this like level where I'm like, okay, now I'm breaking down even these little phrases. And the interesting thing I'm finding is when people look at me and see the blonde hair and the blue eyes, they're like, I'm speaking good Khmer, because a lot of people say that my pronunciation is very good. But some people can't, it's like they can't merge and marry the voice coming out of the body. And they look at me like, and they just don't understand. Yol, you know. But a lot of people say, oh my God, your Khmer is so good, your pronunciation, like everything. But then some people just literally, it's weird. It's like a dissonance, you know? Because I'm like, hello, nie Khmer, hello. And I don't know, it's really weird like that. But I just think it's because they don't expect it.
Yeah.
I think some of the perks of learning the language, number one, is the way Cambodian is. A lot of the language actually gives you a huge glimpse into the history of the country and the culture. Actually, Siem Reap means fallen Thai soldier. Did you know that? Like from the war. So Siem Reap that's basically what it means. Soldier on the ground, or a Thai on the ground. I was like, what? So my Cambodian teacher also teaches a lot of history. But then the second thing is it keeps you safe. So if a Cambodian knows that you can speak Khmer, generally you're just safer because they won't target you. Third, you get way better deals on anything that you're buying, you know, because you can bargain. And they're like, oh, she's local. Okay, let me bring the price down. So yeah, I practice every day with local Cambodians, and now I'm learning to hear better. Siem Reap Sua, Saksabai, Niom Chumui Julia, Hai Ailani, Niom Now River Gallery. Niom Ru Now Cambodia, Bai Chnam Hai, Niom Ru Now Song Gats Vai Dankam, Hai Niom Salang Cambodia Klang Nah Mentan Bibru Niom Jol Jet Niak Khmer, Hai Niom Jol Jet Mahop Khmer, Niom Jol Jet Siem Reap mostly. So, yeah.
Chochat Siem Reap, you like Siem Reap?
Niom Salang Cambodia, yeah.
Oh, okay, he loves Cambodia. So can I ask, why do you choose Siem Reap over the capital city, Phnom Penh?
Okay. I think, honestly, it was just connection-wise. You know, it was just that Siem Reap was the place that felt like home to me. It was the place that I volunteered. It's the home of Colors of Cambodia. And so the people really, for me, became the heart of my decision of where to live in Cambodia. I never really considered Phnom Penh, and it wasn't out of disliking Phnom Penh per se, but yeah, I just felt really at home in Siem Reap, so.
Like before you made the decision to move to Siem Reap, did you try Phnom Penh before you decided to move to Siem Reap?
No, I never tried Phnom Penh. I went initially to visit the killing fields in Tuas Lang and learn some of the history, but for some reason, Phnom Penh never really fully resonated with me, which is interesting because I was coming from a very busy city, but maybe in part that's why Siem Reap ended up resonating with me a little bit more. I feel like in a lot of ways, Phnom Penh is just a little more, maybe it's just too much like New York, you know what I mean? Like, I love how radically different Siem Reap is and how idyllic it is as well, and how peaceful.
What is your friends and family reaction like? Do they support your moving to Cambodia, or like, wow, don't go there, or be careful, or something like that?
When I realized I wanted to move to Cambodia, I was extremely nervous to tell particularly my mother because, I don't know, it's my mom. And she came to New York to visit me, and we were having dinner, and I was like really nervous. And I was like, Mom, I've decided to move to Cambodia. And she was like, oh, okay, great. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, she was basically, she already knew how much I loved it. And so she was just so supportive. Anytime I told my friends, people in the United States, like a lot of them don't even know where Cambodia is literally on the map. They don't know anything about it. So a lot of people would act with shock or they would be like, whoa, like I've never heard of that place. But other than that, my friends, with a little bit of sadness, you know, knowing that I was going to be gone, but they were very, very supportive.
You already planned to move to Cambodia knowing that, okay, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to live here, I'm going to chase my dream here. Did you have a plan like, okay, today or this day, I'm going to own my own art gallery? Or like, okay, let me just go and see what happens in the future? Or you already planned the future here?
I knew that this was my path, interestingly enough, before I moved here. I knew that there would be that I was going to be pivotal in some way, shape, or form. There was a reason for me to come here. One of the biggest reasons for me to be here is to share the beauty of Cambodia, honestly. Like, that's what my TikTok is. It's sharing the temples, sharing prayer, while remaining radically authentic. So I knew that wherever I went, I was going to be completely authentic and continue my art making. So this is one of my paintings from 2022 to 2023. And it's titled Meat Lady or Nieng Sat. Anyone who moves to Cambodia must understand that you cannot live in a vacuum. And I really wanted to be deeply connected to my community, even through my art making. So this was a lovely couple that lives in Wapo, and they own a meat shop. And so every day from sunup to sundown, they chop up beautiful fresh meats, frog legs, chicken. The husband makes sauces with mortar and pestle. And then around 5:30, 6 o'clock, Wapo Elementary gets let out, and there's a huge line in front of the shop because the meat is beautiful and delicious and fresh. I would go there and get fish sometimes. But I painted this over the course of 6 months, and yeah, I documented the entire process. And then when it was finished, I made a print, framed it, walked it on down the street and gave it to them. And they were astounded. They were like, what? And I was like, yeah, I've just been painting this for 6 months, but you know, here you go. So this is titled Meat Lady. Okay, so this piece here is actually titled Orbit, and this is one of Soar Sopani's pieces from her solo exhibition that she had last month. It was her first solo exhibition at 36 years old. And this piece is about the delicate balance, the delicate differences between nature and humans. For example, when you have a relationship with the humans, sometimes that relationship can sever and break and fracture, and it's not as easy to get back to the place where you once were. Whereas with nature, when a flower wilts or a plant wilts, if you treat it with love and respect and water it, it will always grow back. So the glass represents the fracture that can exist within human relationships. This work here is by Corona Hoy, born 2003. And Corona, basically when he went back to his village where he grew up, he saw that a lot of people had actually left and abandoned the village in search for work and jobs. And so these were the plants that he found in the house, and he used these plants as metaphor for what had happened in his village. Corona graduated from the Far Art School as valedictorian. House Sak is one of our newest artists. He goes by Zak, and this piece is called Family Dinner, which features a group of dung beetles surrounding a dung ball. And this is a kind of a cheeky piece about sharing a meal together, but he often references these blood cells as a sense of connection and familial line. And here he's humorously saying that sometimes when you share a meal with your family, there can be good times and bad. And he also references the Cambodian brick in the background as well as in this piece. So this artist down here is Our Soban, and he is an artist who uses chants as an element in his work. So he is the first to say that sometimes the pieces work and sometimes they do not. But I love that he does use color and the element of chants in his work. And he's actually gotten considerably big in Cambodia, winning several awards. And he studied with Colors of Cambodia for a few years. This is a new work by Son Kosal. Kosal is a young artist who has many talents, actually. He's trained in Photoshop, he teaches, he's extremely busy. And this is a newer painting of his called Banta Kadai Gate. And it's a beautiful scene of the morning sunlight spilling in, and I absolutely love these blues on the temple here. So this piece here is by Narak, and it features Kokong, which is one of the islands in Cambodia. Generally, Narak is an artist that deals a lot with spirituality and digesting his own emotions, as well as just like really, really trippy, weird, surrealist stuff. Even though this work is very normal, he usually does surrealist imagery, but we sold 2 of his paintings recently, so. Okay, so this is artist Setsing. He's actually working on a new body of works that reference Kabak Angkor. So Kabak is basically a classifier term that talks about the design elements found in the architecture and the temples. And they're very specific design elements that replicate elements of nature, such as the mythical goose tail shape, the snail, the lotus, or fire. So this is one of his new works. I love it, Burning Flowers. The color is insane, but yellow is my favorite color, so. This is one of Bill's pieces. Bill was actually born in 1959 in California, and he lived in Singapore for 25 years. His family had a really big factory, Shanghai, Singapore, France, India. So when he sold the factory, then he finally moved back to Siem Reap. But what Bill saw in 2003 was a complete lack of artistic educational resources in the entire country of Cambodia. So that's when he founded the Colors of Cambodia Art School in 2003. So the school itself is basically a free art school for all Cambodian children and teenagers. And it has undoubtedly seen thousands of students pass through the doors of that school. In addition, we have 12 salaried teachers that go to surrounding schools within a half-hour radius in Siem Reap to also teach extending into the countryside, which is really important. So Bill is awesome. He just has a heart of gold, and I'm so blessed that I met him when I did in 2015. This piece by Sopani Soor is called Guardians of a Thousand Hands, and at a first glance, you might not fully catch the picture of what this is, but here you'll find the shape of a woman's womb. And this piece is actually about family as it differs in Southeast Asia versus, say, for example, the United States. In Southeast Asia, the family is not just the mother and father, but it's the aunties, the uncles, the cousins. It's the entire umbrella of the family. And something to take note with in Pani's work is she is very avant-garde. She talks a lot about personal autonomy and independence, but she also references her Cambodian culture here with the Kabak Angkor.